My name is Jessica Alderman, and I serve as the general education teacher here at Harrison with Mrs. Adair.
Mhm. I'm Mrs. Dare. I'm the learning specialist that works with Mrs. Alderman in the collab classroom. Prior to this, to us co-teaching together, I was self-contained teacher and my kids pushed into her classroom. And so then when we were kind of trying to reschedule and restructure kind of the whole SPED department and pushing like inclusion, they paired us up together and we've been co-teaching ever since then.
What side would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I guess I can start. So my name is Alexander Riccio. I'm an English gen ed teacher, and I teach 11th grade English, and I work with my special ed specialist partner.
I am Courtney Privet, and I work at Woodside High School along with Alexander Riccio, and we teach 11th grade English together
Mhm.
and have for
Going on,
a few years.
going on. It's either year 4 or 5. No, year
Yeah.
4 together. Yeah.
So how do you two decide which parts of the lesson need specially designed instruction, and how do you align those with the general curriculum, with your general curriculum goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this will be a two-parter, and I guess I'll start a little bit and then hand it over to Courtney. So generally speaking, the way we do it at Woodside High School is that, and also, sorry, you can still hear me hopefully with the micro with my headphones in.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, at Woodside High School, the general ed teacher is responsible for mapping out the unit, right, and then following the prescriptive, uh, like scheduling for how the district wants the 11th grade to teach. And then so step one in that process is I will look at 5 weeks worth of lessons and I'll map out the standards and the skills we're going to be covering. And then I bring that information to Courtney, and that's when we kind of start talking about like our particular kids with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will decide where the our students with disabilities, where they'll need the extra support to master those strands and the targets, as well as keeping IEP goals in mind and their accommodations, so that we can stay compliant, but hopefully get through the lessons and master the strand that they need to master per the scripted curriculum.
Yeah,
That's
and and
awesome.
and something that Courtney does at the beginning of every year, and then updates it as like our rosters change. That's always very, very helpful to me. Is that she makes like a spreadsheet of all of our students with IEPs and 504s, and she's got like their accommodations mapped out. She's got information about like past test scores, because we have like 7th and 8th grade reading data, and like in Newport News, we have this local performance assessment, which is this writing test that kids take in 9th and 10th grade before they meet us. And so with that information, Courtney almost pre-arms me to kind of be able to anticipate the needs, like before I even get to know the kids really well myself, that they're going to meet. And then so those things together help us shape, like the areas of weakness that we anticipate coming in our lessons.
I would imagine it's difficult with a block schedule and having, because I know for us, we have the same kids every day. So I can imagine, or not every day, but all day. So I can imagine how difficult it is when you have when you see, four more different classes in one day.
Yeah, that can be a lot, and then like for sure. But luckily, Courtney works with many, not all of them, but many of our students with disabilities. She works with them in a support class, which is in addition to the class that we meet them in. And then so Courtney becomes very expert in the particular skill sets of the kids that we teach. And then I often will defer to her expertise when we start talking about like difficulties we anticipate in a lesson.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then what strategies do you use together to embed SDI into the lesson so that students with IEPs can access the same content as their peers?
So I think that Mr. Riccio is really a great teacher when he does his explicit modeling, and he does a lot of think alouds. And he's like, if I came across this, this is what I would do. This is what I'm thinking as I work through it. Um, and does really well to show the kids that this is the steps that he would take as he's going through and working through, um, a literary, passage. Of course, we scaffold. I don't know. I mean, that's the biggest part of it. And then even with our text, we chunk a lot of our text into smaller pieces, stopping along the way, going through those with, graphic organizers and things so that we can make sure that they're understanding the bits and pieces as we're doing it. I also offer anchor charts. They have folders we put their writing and their reading in there together, but there's anchor charts in there. We come up with a lot of mnemonics like steal for characterization, which goes along with like what the characters speaking, what their the effect on others, and their looks. I'm lost. I can't remember what the T is right now.
Oh, sure. Um,
Um, and then like soapstones, we've been doing those a lot for poetry here in Unit 1, which is another organizer we use that talks about the speaker, the occasion, the audience, the purpose, the significance, and then the tone. And all of
Yeah.
these things will end up being on the SOL at some point. And then we just provide a lot of opportunities for guided practice.
Now, when
Yeah,
you use those strategies, do you guys talk about which strategies that you guys want to use during the planning process?
Yeah, very much so. I think if we can use like a metaphor to kind of describe how we divvy up this like planning process, you could say that it's kind of like I'm the person, like if a lesson is a room, I'm the person who's going to be uh decorating the room in the sense that like I might decide the text that we're using, I might decide what the finished product that like we're going to be like that the kids are going to be producing looks like, and then Courtney brings in all the like functional material and the furniture. Yeah, I know. Sorry, it's also snack time. Like the functional material and like the tools that the kids are going to use to get to that finished product, right? And then so like all those English in secondary in high school is often filled with acronyms that the kids learn over and over again.
Mhm.
So and it's kind of like meeting up and talking about those things.
Okay. How do you divide roles and responsibilities during the planning process? Just to make sure that the SDI is intentionally addressed and not more so like an afterthought.
Okay. I see his head coming up and down.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. So we've worked together for so long. This is actually what will happen in the classroom. We have just worked together now for so many years. Like we just trust each other. We trust each other's ideas. We trust how we're going to implement it together. And we just design our lessons that way with, the lessons that we're given, but we've add in what we know and our tried and true practices that we know that this is what's going to work, even though that's not what the district has given us. We put in our little spin on it so that we make it ours. And then, we just know that it's going to work. And we have in between classes, because we've had classes back to back, it didn't work. And somehow we'll stand in the hallway and go, this is what we're going to do this next class. And we'll switch it to make it work. And we're lucky that we just know that it's going to work.
Yeah, we've gotten very good at reading each other for sure. And I think kind of like having an intuitive understanding of what the other one's thinking, and like we see things the same way. Also, if I could add on to that, I think a more formal way that we make sure that our SDI is not an afterthought is over the last few years, we've been trying to be really standards forward in our lesson planning. And in the sense that I think like earlier in my teaching career, I would think in terms that are maybe more everyday, like, like we're learning about inferencing today, or whatever. And then I've learned over time to really lean on the numbered system of standards that we have in Virginia, because when we make our lesson standards forward and we make our assessment
Mhm.
standards forward, Courtney and I are very aware of like explicitly named skills that are grade level appropriate and how kids are doing on them, right? And then so we have like a lot of different opportunities to kind of keep track of that data. Like every 4 or 5 weeks, like the district had us administer these benchmarks that we put into these tables, the things that we create together. We're always asking ourselves, like if this is 2 or 3 standards, what 2 or 3 standards, I know, kiddo, are these? And so we're writing them down. And then because we're always talking standards, I can look back at how a kid's been doing on like take anything you want, like take, like comparing text across genres and like finding yeah, I'm sorry about the multitasking. This was a completely unintentional result. So we're like very aware, like so, this we're doing a lesson on we're taking 2 genres of text and we're like, finding main ideas and we're getting kids to like compare and contrast them. We've got a lot of data that tells us what our kids with disabilities have done on similar activities before. And that's where we look to say, well, maybe here's where we need to focus on our SDI, because we have these 5 kids who have traditionally not done as well on assignments that lean on similar skills. And so those 2 things together, I think it's definitely the intuitive long-term relationship, but it's also kind of learning that data is important and that maybe like doing data in the boring way is more powerful than early career Riccio would have looked like or thought, because there's always, I don't know about you guys, but I used to have a real resistance to like saying, well, the kids don't care about the standards, so why should I?
And then, how do you adapt or differentiate materials such as text assignments, assessments, or technology that's being used while still keeping the rigor for all students?
We don't get to adapt
I know,
um,
sweetie. So
our literature very much because it has to be
Yeah.
on grade level. What we do is we're able to pre-teach vocabulary with some other things like we'll have graphic organizers, we have our anchor charts like the soapstones and different and steel for characterization and things like that to try to get them to understand what's what the literary text is about. We have to go back on those organizers in order to be able to differentiate a lot of it because it has to be, we have to teach the same thing across the district on the same day. So you could walk into any 11th grade classroom and we should be reading almost the same things and everybody's going to do it a different way, which is fine, but you just have to read the same text. So, some of the things we just make sure we focus on is pre-teaching what we need to pre-teach, having the organizers that we need, having audio when available for those that qualify for audio. That's how we adapt as what we can do.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat. Last couple of years, it's been just so stringent and strict that, you have to do exactly what's approved by the state and what everybody else is doing. We have a little bit of leadway during our structured literacy, where we can kind of like, as far as like their spelling list, have to follow the same rules and the same content that they're doing, but I can maybe tweak the words a little bit, like saying if they have
Right.
multiple syllable words, ours may have just one syllable word. So we can adapt just a little bit in that area, but it makes it, I feel like it makes it a little bit difficult sometimes, but then again, I do still understand that we're trying to stick with the rigor and keep those standards, with the sped kids as well.
Okay. So I'm totally gonna Google, and this might be a silly question. I'm a soapstone.
Oh, sure. So soapstone's like
What is a soapstone?
this might not be particularly useful to anybody else in the chat, but it's like an old English teacher trick for helping kids to like place a piece of writing within its context. So it's like the general idea of soapstone is that I just repeat is that everything that was ever written was written by a human being who was like experiencing a particular time and place. And then so like the S stands for speaker, the O stands for the occasion, meaning like like the place and the time. The A is like intended audience. The P is purpose.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh.
And then the
That's
and
the
so it's like stuff like
significance.
that. And then what Soapstone really is so they learn that acronym, and then each of those acronyms has like a set of questions that goes, or not acronym, each of the initials in that acronym rather has like a set of questions that the kids kind of learn to ask themselves. Like for example, if they're talking about the speaker, there are questions like, what can you like, can you infer anything about the speaker's like age or racial demographic or things like that? Or for like the occasion, it's like, what do you know about this time in history or things? So it's like these set of questions that the kids kind of learn, they can ask themselves that apply to most texts that help them start thinking about it in its time and place, and then hopefully arrive at like deeper understandings of their themes, which is what we're always looking for in 11th grade
Okay.
English.
That makes more sense. All right. So what systems do you have in place to reflect on the effectiveness of the SDI after a lesson so that you can adjust for future planning?
Yeah, so that's kind of where that like keeping track of like things by standard is really comes
Okay.
into play. That like our commitment to saying we're going to organize by standard and we're going to look at how the kids are doing is how we decide whether things are successful or not.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so
Yeah.
much for answering all of our questions on co-planning.
Well, and we're getting ready to have data because we took
Yeah, we
a
mid-quartered this very day.
mid-quarter today, and
Yeah.
so next time we sit down together, we
Yeah.
will have to look at that data and pull the different strands, what was weak, and what they were good at, because then when keep going on the good stuff, but looking at where they were weak, and then looking into the next unit how we can add some of those things back into some of the lessons, even though that's not quite the focus, but to keep working on it. So it's always data driven, always data driven.
Well, now we're
Yeah,
going to
well, thanks
hear
for
from the
saying-
elementary teachers to see what they
Yes.
do.
Yes. All right. So, ladies, how can co-teachers
Sure, well, I'm
collaborate
gonna mute myself.
during lesson planning to ensure that the grade level standards are being met while still meeting the individual IEP goals?
So we typically begin planning with the grade level standards as well as the specific learning objectives that are being addressed within each lesson that are within the standard. So we focus on identifying the key skills and knowledge that the students must master. And then we take a pertinent piece of collaborative planning so that we can effectively break down the standard into smaller teachable objectives. Then we determine which IEP goals naturally align with the standard. So for example, if the standard is about writing complete sentences and a student's IEP goal targets writing conventions, then it can be addressed within the same task. So in addition to that, we also review accommodations for each student and then determine which accommodations the students will need in order or access during the lesson so that appropriate instruction is being given or provided.
Okay. How do you determine where in the lesson that the SDI strategies can be applied, specifically when you're dividing your teaching responsibilities?
So usually how we first begin is we decide like how we're going to support instruction. Our whole group instruction, lots of times we start with team teaching because we find that it's very interactive and kind of gets the kids engaged, which other times like we have noticed which sometimes she will do, like she will teach and I will kind of assist, but for that whole group instruction, it's more like we kind of just need them to focus and be in the moment. So we found that that's how we start a lot of our lessons. And then after that, we've engaged them for the initial presentation of the concept. We kind of decide, we know how important embedding SDIs and providing multiple opportunities to practice the skills. So then we kind of talk about, okay, so what teaching model after the initial presentation will be most effective for what we're learning today? So we may do like station teaching, or we may do parallel teaching, we may do alternative teaching. It kind of just depends on which we think will be most effective for the application of the concept for that day, if that makes sense.
Alex,
I like the team teaching too, because it really allows our class and our students to see us as a team, if that makes sense, instead of just her and me or her and I think when they see us working together like that, they know that we are one, basically.
Well, that's what Alex and I strive for. I think that's especially in high school where they're starting to understand that they have an IEP and some things that are different.
Yeah.
To how we are the team, to make sure that they don't play also the good cop bad cop.
Oh,
Right.
sure.
Um,
In high school,
so,
that's the biggest thing is the good cop, bad cop. They try or mom, dad, good cop, bad cop. They play all that on you. Yeah.
yeah, but we fall back a lot to the team teaching. Our goal, our room is really not set up to ever do parallel teaching, but at some point we're going to
Yeah.
give it a whirl. We're going to,
It really was so great to hear the people that were doing parallel teaching talk about it over the summer. But then Courtney and I were like, this is the room set up. We're in this tiny room and it's like the physical space is the limitation.
how do you prevent students with disabilities from being isolated while you're embedding the SDI into your whole group instruction and small group work and independent practice?
So for us, we use student data to group our students. However, those students with our IEPs are not always grouped together. So this ensures that the groups are fluid. So students with IEPs are not always pulled separately. Even within the classroom, their seating, our students with IEPs are not together, unless for some reason they have to be. But typically, if they don't, if it's not a necessity, we try to spread them out and just try to mingle them in with all the other gen ed kids. And so for whole group instruction, lessons with multiple entry points such as visuals, modeling, sentence frames, manipulatives, and technologies support that it looks like part of good teaching and not just for some kids. So we use a lot of those in our whole group lesson so that all of the kids kind of get it too, but it doesn't look like certain kids are being singled out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And when we use team teaching or parallel teaching, the special education teacher provides the SDI, such as modeling, reading strategies, prompting with graphic organizers, kind of similar to what you guys do without pulling those students away. So
Okay.
we try to mix them in as much as possible. And sometimes I'll even, when it comes to pairing students with like high and low, like I have them work together, or some of my students that are read alouds, in order to meet your AR goal, I'll have some of my high students read to my low students to help meet their reading goal, because they get those read aloud accommodations. And honestly, a lot of the high, they actually enjoy it because it's peer on peer. So,
Yeah, and we try to look at the students at their strengths as well, when we're grouping them. Like for instance, like I have a student this year who does have accommodations in math, but they're pretty good and pretty independent at using them. And math is his strong suit. So usually he's not really grouped with me. I mean, I'll check on him or she'll check on him, but he's usually in a higher mix of kids when he's grouped together in math, because he doesn't really need me as much, I guess.
right.
Which is
Yeah.
a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of laughing because I saw Danielle's pop up that said, we did a lot of examples of station teaching last year. This year we ended up finding something we really enjoyed, and we called it speed dating, and we've done it this
Yeah.
year. And so even today we did a station, and we paired them as they thought, using Canvas, which it will, randomize the grouping for you, which is good, like you said, with the pair, but then we tweak it and because sometimes
Yeah, with
pairs
a
are
pretty heavy
not-
hand.
go, oh no, that's not going to work, and put a different student, break some of those groups up, but they think it's random, and we'll just continue letting them think it's random on something. All right. And then what code teaching models do you think are the best suited for you and your
Well, we use all the co-teaching models and we enjoy each one actually.
We really do.
We really, really do. Each lesson, we decide which one will be most effective. Back to station teaching, I think that we have found station teaching probably the most effective. Especially I feel like in the most recent years, it allows us to not only differentiate for like all learning levels, but it also allows us to work in a very small group.
Mhm.
And we all know that kind of like that up close and personal direct instruction with modeling, in a small group, is highly effective for, all kids these days. It provides them with more opportunities to practice those skills, and that also, we can take formative assessments during this time to further guide instruction. I also mentioned earlier that we really like to do parallel teaching as well, especially in math. If it's like if the content is big, we can break it down and like she'll take a piece of it, and I'll take a
Mhm.
piece of it, and I'll teach them the other concept, and then we'll switch. I feel like it saves time. We can get through the content a little bit, not quicker, just kind of like within the time frame they've given us.
Right.
Because once again, you've taken like a big class and broken it down to a smaller group. So I feel like we're able to provide instruction, give them opportunities to practice, and then some independent practice, a little bit faster pace than when it's a whole group.
We recently did that with comparing and ordering. So I would teach, I think she taught comparing and I taught ordering,
Yeah.
and then we would switch so that they were getting both of it at the same time, but also in a smaller group. And they seem to do well with that.
Yeah. And those are the ones that we use the most, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really jealous that you're able to save time. We really,
Yes,
Sometimes.
once we did it and realized, oh my gosh, I think that really works. We tend to lean to it a lot, and have shared that with our other, co-teaching pairs as well.
all right, Alex, we're going to make it a goal. We're going to try it at least once.
Save some time.
I think for sure we can do some. Yeah. We just
Well,
got to get over the room shyness.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because they ask us every year, they ask us to move up to third grade. And what really holds us back is the rooms are so small. The rooms are so
So
small.
it's on the third grade hallway.
I can't imagine doing what we do now, in that little room. It wouldn't happen.
all right. So how do you and your co-teacher monitor like student progress in the moment during a lesson to ensure that the SDI strategies are effective for your students?
So when it comes to monitoring student progress, we look, and that really depends on two factors: student goals and which co-teaching model we are using. So if one teacher is delivering the instruction, the other may be circulating the classroom at the time, taking quick notes or using a checklist to monitor specific IEP goals, or skill use. So when using the other co-teaching models, such as parallel, alternative, and station teaching, it involves more of the learning specialist using sticky notes and clipboards to record observations and real-time data to record the students' responses from their SDI strategies. Of course, we also look at student work samples, summative test scores, formative scores, any type of quizzes, just daily checks. We look at those as well. And that's how we do monitor. It's very similar to you guys.
Okay. All right. And then what strategies have you found that are the most effective when embedding student accommodations and any modifications while also maintaining the academic expectations and rigor?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that we do is present material in a variety of modalities, such as, visuals, manipulatives, using technology, read alouds, graphic organized, while still targeting the same standard, as the rest of the grade level.
This phone call.
And also embed not only the accommodations and make sure the accommodations are embedded and try to play towards the student's strengths. We try to, scaffold, like you said earlier, scaffold without lowering the expectations. That usually involves breaking complex tasks and smaller, more manageable steps, providing sentence starters, checklists, guided practice, a lot of guided practice before independent mastery or practice. And then we try to any supports that we've given. We use a lot of graphic organizers, and even for elementary school, especially at math, we've made a lot of graphic organizers that align with what specifically with we're teaching. They're homemade, but they work. But they start out with them, and then we gradually pull them away. And they're using their scrap paper or their whiteboards like everybody else. We try rotating groups, based on skills. I feel like that's another way to maintain the rigor, and promote like those critical thinking skills, not letting them get stuck in one little group where we're expecting just, to get by, just to barely, show mastery.
Right.
We use teacher-led small groups to deliver SDI, while maybe other students may be engaging in more meaningful, independent or collaborative practices. Because we want to make sure that the class is not, we're not focused on just our SPED students. We've got to get hit our mid-level students and then our more advanced students as well. Because, I know that our principal has really pushed, like last year, that we need to make sure that we're differentiating for those more advanced learners as well. I think that like the last couple of years, especially in elementary, the reading is such an issue. The reading levels are so low that they were like push, remediate, do this, all these different programs, but then they realized, hey, we've kind of are forgetting about our advanced learners, and we need to keep promoting those higher order thinking skills. And then when planning for the embedding of accommodations into our lesson, I think it's important that we remember that we're supposed to use these accommodations are meant as a tool, and not a crutch. So we try to incorporate the accommodations, things like visuals. I think of math, a lot of them comes to mind, like manipulatives, calculators, number lines, even like text to speech as tools to enhance access to the grade level curriculum, and how important it is we have to teach them how to use the accommodations. So that may involve sometimes me maybe doing a lot of pre-teaching before the content. Like sometimes, like there's say a number line, for instance, in elementary school, a number line is something we use a lot, but depending on what the content is or the concept, the way you use that number line can be totally different.
Mhm.
So we're kind of running into that problem right
Yeah.
now.
Coming from first grade.
Yeah, coming from first grade, we'd had, the teacher previously they didn't use number lines. They used, groupings. They used like little
Circles.
When you get to second grade and you're getting to these really bigger numbers, the circles, are kind of problematic. So we're also reviewing just, basic addition and subtraction skills and trying to teach the number line using that, but then we're also having to use the number line to find missing numbers in a fact family right now. So they are kind of having to go back and forth, and I don't think we quite anticipated that because we didn't realize they did not use a number line last year and didn't know how to add and subtract without that. So I think that that's one of the biggest things is with the accommodations is remembering that they're a tool that we have to teach them to use, and we want them to be able to carry that on to the next content, the next grade level, something they can use, for the rest of their schooling.
Bless y'all.
I
'Cause
think
your
the
job
important
is-
thing too there is teaching them when to pull certain items to use to help them. So when do I need to use a number line? Do I need to use a number line for this? Do I need to use my tens frame? Do I need to use my my Unifix cubes? What do I need to use for adding and subtracting or regrouping or whatever it is? That way, when they get to that third grade and they're taking those SOL tests and they have all of this stuff out in front of them, okay, I know this is a 2-digit addition problem. I can use my number line for this. Let me grab my number line. I think that's important because when they're taking an SOL test, you can't tell them which one to use. So it's very important that they know when it comes to a certain standard or what they're having to solve, what objects they need to pick in order to solve those problems, if that makes sense.
Y'all are amazing. Bless all of you. I mean, I taught it myself, but it's been a while and it is so
Well,
much.
same way, bless you, because we
Yes.
can't imagine teaching high school.
I will,
love
I
myself.
will tell you, I am going through this William and Mary cohort for leadership, and I did some hours at the football game on Friday night. Oh my word, high school kids. I was like, oh, we threw a couple people out for fighting. There was over there. It was rough.
It can be. It can be. So, just like as we wrap up, what is your favorite lesson y'all have ever done together?
Oh, that's easy for me.
Ooh. Which one is?
My favorite lesson is a book called Gumption that we
Oh,
at the beginning of
yes.
the year. It's that for me, I love it. It's like they're going, I don't know if any of y'all have ever read it, but they're going on an expedition, and it's like every day is a different interactive lesson that has to do with like retelling the story, vocabulary. The kids get binoculars and they have to, like, every time that they're looking for this Zimbobo mountain gorilla, and every time that they see it, like, they have to put up their oh my God, what are they called?
They're binoculars.
Binoculars. And that's after day 2. That's probably my favorite lesson. We even used it to incorporate. We had a special education student who had some physical limitations, and the physical therapist had encouraged her to walk at the pace with your class and try to hold her to those expectations and push her a little bit. And so one of the words was strides. And so we did a lot of demonstrations and
Mhm.
talking about what it means and stuff. And so when we're walking in line, we started using it, to use your long strides as you're walking. And it helped her keep up pace and kind of started building up a little bit more stamina than she had before. That's my very favorite lesson. Since HMH has come along, I'm not supposed to do that lesson anymore, but Miss Alderman lets me do it the first week of school while we're teaching for seniors.
She loves that lesson.
I love it. Yeah.
We found a hat on TBT they can make. But I would say my favorite is, it's kind of random, but so we used to have PBL night, and we had to create a problem. And so one of the problems was we had the local animal shelter come in and do a whole presentation, with the animals and what the animal shelter does and stuff like that. Well, they had a problem. Their problem was that they didn't have enough supplies at the animal shelter for all the animals that they were giving. So we brought it back to the classroom, and we tried to solve a problem, and we talked about ways that we could have solved this problem and what we could do as citizens in our community and stuff like that. And so we all made snuffle mats. The whole class made snuffle mats, and we sold them during PBL night for like $5 each. I don't know if you know what a snuffle mat is, but you put the treats in it and the dogs sniff it and they get the treats out. Anyways, the parents loved them, so we were able to donate some money to the animal shelter. And then we also took donations, so they were able to give donations and stuff like that. So they were able to really connect it to their own community in which they live. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, everybody was involved. Were difficult for some of them.
Right.
But that like tying when we did the snuffle mats, like tying and stuff like that, because you would not imagine how many second graders do not know how to tie a knot.
Tie.
But
Right.
they definitely learned that day, because there was a lot of knots that we had to tie to get those snuffle mats together. They had to tie. I mean, there was a couple of different things that we were doing, but they all enjoyed it so much that we had no problem getting them to participate, or even them being able to participate, if that makes sense.
Right.
All right. I would say that is the end of our presentation. Do we have any questions?